As I'm sure most of you will already know, bleed is such a crutch mechanic in Elden Ring to the point that you can take one of the worst weapons in the entire game, apply bleed to it, and then all of a sudden it's an absolute monster. Well, today I'm going to show you the absolute best bleed build you can craft in Elden Ring that is capable of doing tens of thousands of damage pretty much every single second. Now, of course, the main weapon that we're going to be using in this build is going to be the Gargoyle Twin Blade, and this is going to be a build that uses two of them, so it does require you to go into New Game Plus. That is because the way that you obtain this weapon is by defeating the Twin Gargoyles, which is the boss fight located in the Siofra Aqueduct, and like I say, upon defeating both of them, one of the items you get is this Twin Blade. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, well, hang on a second, it's all well and good that we've got this weapon now, but it doesn't have bleed on it, so how can it be the best bleed weapon? Well, luckily for us, the Twin Blade can be infused with any Ash of War, including, more specifically, the Cragblade Ash of War. Now, Cragblade is essentially the most crucial part of this entire build, because not only can you use it to then infuse this weapon into a bleed variant, but when you actually use Cragblade, it also overrides your scaling, making it a heavy variant. So, whenever you use the Ash of War to coat your weapon in that sort of rubble of rock, you will then have an S-rated scaling in strength. But don't worry, because although I'm saying it changes it to a heavy variant, it still keeps the bleed affinity on the weapon, meaning that you've got an S-rated scaling in strength along with around about 100 bleed proc, making an extremely potent mix of both raw damage and bleed build-up. But again, the Cragblade doesn't stop there, because as much as that is insane by itself, the Cragblade Ash of War also boosts your damage output by 15%, as well as giving an extra 10% boost to your poise damage. Mix all of that in with the fact that you can have two of these weapons with all of those buffs that I've just mentioned, it should be very easy to see how you can do so much damage with this build, especially when we can make use of the unique jumping attack that allow you to do 5 or 6 hits with these weapons every single second. And of course, if you're wondering how you get your hands on the Cragblade Ash of War, it is a reward for defeating one of the Silver Scarabs, more specifically this one, just next to the impassable gate bridge Site of Grace. Instead of going over the bridge, if you literally go the opposite way and keep left to jump up this sort of little ledge, there will be a Silver Scarab hidden just on the other side, and again, after defeating that Silver Scarab, you will get this Ash of War. But I'm sure you're eager to use this build for yourself, so let me show you the stats required. And again, as always with my build videos, this is a level 150 character, and as you can see on screen, we've got 50 points into Vigor, 15 into Mind, 24 Endurance, and then we've got 70 Strength, 15 Dexterity, as we need that Dexterity to actually wield the weapon, before then finishing off with 10 Intelligence, 25 Faith, and 20 Arcane. And again, without repeating myself too much, obviously the reason why we've put so much into Strength is to make use of that S scaling in Strength when we use the Cragblade Ash of War, but I also put a little bit into Arcane just to boost the bleed proc a little bit and push it past the 100 barrier, because then essentially that way, every time that we use a jumping attack with these weapons, we can pretty much expect that bleed build up to proc straight away. And then we've also got 25 points into Faith to run both Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength, because then we can get the buffs from them, the extra 15% from Golden Vow, and then the extra 20% physical boost from Flame Grant Me Strength, as well as actually its stamina regen too. That stamina regen, of course, is extremely important because we're going to be abusing the absolute hell out of the jumping attacks, because still to this day it's one of the most broken mechanics, and is also a certain attack that can be buffed to high heaven, which of course is another contributor to why we can do so much damage so quickly. But of course, one of the main things that's boosting our damage output is our brilliant selection of talismans, and I highly suggest that you run the following. Because we're going to be doing so many attacks in quick succession, of course, Millicent's Prosthesis is going to be incredibly useful for this particular build, and it gives a +5 in Dexterity, which doesn't really boost the AR all that much, but even if it's just by 1 or 2, it's still a healthy boost. But of course, the main thing is going to be the successive damage output, or at least the boost that you get from Millicent's Prosthesis with that, and we can stack that boost even further by also running the Rottened Winged Insignia. And like I mentioned earlier, where we're going to be abusing those jumping attacks, we of course can also run the Claw Talisman, as that will give us an extra 15% damage output whenever we attack enemies whilst jumping, before then finishing off the talismans with the Ritual Swords talisman, which will grant us an extra 10% damage output as long as we're at full HP. Now with that particular talisman last, you can swap that out for the Lord of Blood's Exaltation. I simply had the Ritual Swords talisman on throughout the gameplay that you're seeing because although this is a bleed build, it is still extremely powerful against enemies that are resistant to bleed, just simply where we've got such a high amount of base damage due to the strength scaling on this weapon. If you do come up against enemies like Radagon and the Elden Beast that are resistant to bleed, then the Ritual Swords talisman is going to give you that extra boost that of course you're not going to get with the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, but of course you can swap between them, so in all of the other fights where enemies are susceptible to bleed, you can of course run the Lords of Blood's Exaltation if you want to, and then swap that out for the Ritual Sword when needed. But either way, no matter what talisman you decide to use, the wonder physic is always going to stay the same, as I highly recommend that you run the Strength Knot tier to boost our strength to a total of 80 points, as well as running the Thorny Crack tier to give our third boost to successive damage output. But if for whatever reason that still isn't enough damage boosting items for you, there is still one more thing that we can do, and that is to wear the Raptor Black Feathers armor, as when you have that equipped, you will gain an extra 10% boost to your damage whenever you use those jumping attacks. And essentially with everything combined, because I know there's a lot of buffs going on, I mean we've got the armor buffing us, all of the talismans buffing us, obviously the Cragblade Ash of War buffing our damage output too, I was able to get an attack rating of 1685. I'll obviously show you the footage off screen of me getting it, but essentially after hitting your enemies multiple times, obviously activating all of those boosts, we are doing that damage with every single hit. And then again, bear in mind we're going to be hitting our enemies like 5 or 6 times each time we do a jumping attack. We are then of course going to be doing around about 8,000 damage just simply with the base AR, and then if we proc bleed, that can very easily jump into the tens of thousands, which is of course what you've been seeing throughout this video. Also, just to clear up, because I haven't mentioned it so far in this video, the footage that you're seeing is from New Game Plus 6, so it's the second hardest playthrough, with obviously enemies having the second best defense and the second largest health pools, but even still this build is just rinsing through it, and I genuinely have never defeated every single boss in the game as quickly as I have done using this weapon. And as you can also probably see from the gameplay, I'm not the best player, so this is probably going to be even more lethal in your guys' hands, because I'm sure the majority of you are even more capable than me. So yeah, if you're looking for the ultimate bleed weapon to just annihilate everything in Elden Ring, then this is definitely the build for you. But yeah, there we have it. That is the best bleed build, or just the best build really in general that I have ever used in Elden Ring. I've been meaning to use these weapons for quite some time, because again, as a channel that is making all sorts of overpowered builds, I am working my way through all of the weapons, so I know this is kind of a little bit late to the party. Well, I say a little bit late, probably about 2 years late, but we're still covering it anyway, because I'm sure there's probably some of you out there that maybe haven't tried this weapon before seeing this video, just like myself. So hopefully this has helped you out and hopefully opened your eyes to the possibilities that you can do, especially with the Cragblade Ash of War. Either way, I hope this video has been fun and enjoyable for you guys, and if you have found it fun or interesting in any way, then do be sure to hit that like button. It helps out the channel a whole bunch, and if you want to see more builds like this, hitting the like button is the quickest and easiest way to tell me that. And if you're new around here, or you find yourself coming back to the channel and you want to stick around for more crazy builds just like this, then of course feel free to hit that subscribe button down below. It's free to do, and like I say, that way you'll stay up to date with the rest of the videos that I upload on this channel. We're also closing in on 20,000 subscribers, so if you want to join the existing legends that are already here and part of this wonderful community, then like I say, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And as always, whilst you're down there, if you have any ways to improve this build, then be sure to put your suggestions down in the comments as well. I know you guys love to share your thoughts and feelings and make adaptations to these builds in these videos in the comments, so again, feel free to do exactly that. But otherwise, use this build for yourself, go have an immense amount of fun with it, and of course let me know how you get on whilst you use it. But other than that, I'm going to love you and leave you, so thank you once again for watching this particular video. But for now, I guess I will catch you in the next video of whatever it is that we make. Bye bye.